Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast, The Circle of Hope. My name is Valerie Hope. I am your host, and I'm so excited that every time I have this podcast, I have an opportunity to speak to someone where we explore the idea of having relationships and connections with people that help us grow and thrive. And today is no different. I have a very special guest, and I'm honored to welcome Lucy Hope to our podcast. Now, Lucy Hope, you see that there is no coincidence. We have the same last name because she's my niece. Lucy, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so glad to be honest. It's like honestly so cool.
Yeah, good. And Lucy, you're not the first person in your family, right? You are my brother's daughter. You're not the first one in the family to be on a podcast. I think I have been able to find a role for almost every member of the family so far. I think the only two that haven't been on the podcast are your youngest sister and your younger brother.
Yes.
So, all right. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I got Lucy. Yes. So we'll see. Maybe in the future there'll be a role or something for them. We'll see. Um, but Lucy, specifically, one of the reasons that I wanted to invite you on this podcast is because you and I are working together on the podcast, right? You are actually my, I guess, virtual assistant for the summer. And this is something that you, as a rising senior in high school, getting some experience in. I thought, hey, this would be a really good opportunity for you to be on the front of the camera so that you know what the guests that are on this podcast do as you're helping with some of the back end production stuff. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the podcast. Why did you say yes?
I just feel like the podcast is for a really good reason, exploring the people who support us and challenge us and are parallels to us. I think it's a really good purpose and I would like to discuss it with you.
All right, cool. Okay, so we're gonna get into all that. The first thing I thought would be helpful for people to know about you, Lucy, is that you are, I want to say the first time I met you, I don't know if you remember this. We're clearly related, right? But your mom and dad were both Marines and you all moved around quite a bit. So you were born, was it in California?
Yes, San Diego.
Okay, in San Diego. So the first time I met you, I want to say you were probably a year or two old. I don't think I saw you until a couple years after you were born. Does that sound right to you? You may not, you
I
won't
would not
remember.
know.
No, you won't remember. So, so I remember that, and I think it was almost the same for most of your siblings. I met you all like a year or so into living, but remember specifically, oh, is one of them there? Is that Alice?
That was Rosa.
Rosa? Yeah, Rosa knows when this is podcast time that she has to, she's been on one. But I remember one of the things I remember about you, and you may or may not have any recollection of this, but you were always very curious. You're always very curious. And in fact, I have this one memory where I was cooking something, which I often do when when I'm visiting you guys. I was cooking something and I know that I don't, maybe your mom was out or your mom and dad were out or something. Maybe I was babysitting and taking care of you and Carly, but I remember picking you up because you were like, what are you cooking? What's going on? And I was making some dish. I can't remember what it was. And and I asked if you wanted to taste it. You may not recall this, but I do this to this day. I always ask you guys, "Hey, can you taste test this?" But that's when it started, Lucy. And I remember that your curiosity being something that was really interesting to me. And I've noticed over the years that you are still quite a curious person, right? That, or at least open enough to learn and be engage with things. But because this podcast is about people and humans, I'm curious, how does this being curious look like when it comes to people?
Um, I'm always looking for Charlie. She's not in here. I'm literally recording a podcast, bro. I would say the curiosity extends to
All right.
people. I honestly, I tend to stay pretty quiet around most people, which is kind of surprising because I do have a more curious nature. but I like to let people talk a lot. And because they tell you a lot, they will like unconsciously or consciously just tell you a lot throughout
Oh,
your conversation with them. How what kind of anecdotes they use, what kind of how they speak. And I just think it's really interesting to hear people talk. Because you learn so much about them, and it's kind of like keeps you mysterious,
huh.
mysterious,
So you do it on
nonchalant.
purpose?
Yeah.
Hmm. Say, okay, so tell us, give me an example. What is it that you have noticed that you said people say that you like to observe and to listen. They tell you a lot of things. You get to stay mysterious a bit, right? So talk to me about like when do you notice that, just let them cook. Just listen. What tells you to just listen?
When someone is ranting about something or someone is talking about almost anything, honestly, but when you like, especially when it's your friend, if you know something or an acquaintance, someone you want to be closer friends with, when you know more about them than they know about you can almost seem like a better person. You can pick up on smaller details and things they say. Oh, I remember you like this show. And it just makes you seem like a really personable person. And then they don't know the same thing about you. And it makes you like makes them want to be friends with you.
Okay, it makes you seem like a better person. So strategic, very, very tactical. So I wonder though, do you feel that what you do or when you do that, you're truly curious or is it a technique? Or does it matter?
I think well, partially it didn't start as like a let me find out everything there is to know. I just am kind of a quieter person in general. And so
Yeah.
letting people talk has always been like just preferable for me instead of like leading a conversation. So it started in that way. It started in that way, and um, sorry,
Sorry. Do people know that whoever's come in, is that Oscar?
that's Carly. And I told
Carly?
everybody that I was going to be recording a
That's okay.
podcast. And
They wanted to make a cameo appearance. This is what happens when you have, four siblings. It's good. Go ahead, please continue.
so it didn't start as like a technique. It just kind of, but like as like I've grown more confident. Like since I remember like towards like seventh grade, sixth grade, like moving around a lot made me kind of like a shyer person. I didn't like. I also just wasn't that kind of person. I'm kind of introverted. But when I grew more confident, being able to like just, kind of shut down myself and listen to everything that's happening has also allowed me to be a better friend. Like one thing
Yeah.
that's really important to me is that I give my friends good gifts and stuff. And so by listening to what they like and then being able to surprise them with something I know they'll like, that they're like,
Mm.
wait, I didn't even know I wanted this. Like, that's just always so fun. And I do that for my
Huh.
siblings too.
That's so interesting. I don't think I ever knew that you did this consciously, right? But you're right that when we allow people to speak and to share whoever they are, let them show themselves to us, we do pick up on some things that might be helpful in the future, that we could have more influence over them in some ways. If we can be the more thoughtful, it sounds like for you, it's a way of showing how thoughtful you are because you can remember some of the things that they're sharing with you and then use that as a way to give them a gift or surprise them or support them. Interesting. All right, so we're talking about you now supporting other people through your listening, right? This is how you support them. I'm curious about what do you get? What do you receive from being a listener rather than aside from just information? How does this help you when you're in that role?
Hmm. I just think sometimes it allows me to be like more empathetic because like a lot of times when someone just says something about their situation, it's just something. But when they like really get into like how it affects them in different facets of their life, it like honestly like it has allowed me to be more empathetic. Just like not caring like because I would like to talk to. I'm like more confident these days and I think like I do have some stuff I like to say. But like just being able to understand other people and then give them the empathy that they deserve
Yeah.
and like being just an understanding person is really important because sometimes I've noticed this. I've done this sometimes. I can like talk over people or talk about myself a lot, and sometimes it's really important to step back and listen to what other people are saying.
Where'd you learn this?
My aunt probably.
What? I don't think so. I don't think I've been around you that much.
Oh, when I was younger, I used to like, listen to those like psychology videos and stuff.
Did you really? Who were you listening to?
It was like it was like psychology people on like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, where they're like psychology trips to subtly mess with people's minds.
Oh, really? So you were messing with people's minds when you were listening. Master, you're a master manipulator, Lucy. No, I don't think you are. I do. I mean, I've been on the receiving end of your listening. You do pick up on things that I think some people don't. It must be interesting because you have your household is full of people. You have four siblings, right? And then your two parents, of course. So what is it like within your family when you're thinking about how you best show up for them or how they best show up for you? What are you noticing in the dynamic?
So because I do have a lot of siblings, there's just a lot like everyone has their own things going on. Everyone has their own friends at school, own classmates, own situations. And so listening is really important. And I've noticed sometimes like my younger siblings, sometimes they do need someone to listen to, like someone for them to like talk to.
Mm,
And my parents aren't always like around for that, sometimes like it's just like a difficult like generational divide almost.
mm.
And just having, because I didn't have an older sister like me, like I do have an older sister, but we're not
Wow.
as
No shade to Carly.
she's also not that much older than me. She's only 2 years older than me.
Yeah,
So it's a little bit different than having a sibling who's like 8 years older than you and who can
sure.
understand and help you.
Yeah.
And then my parents, especially like as I'm going through like I'm gonna start applying to college soon, and I'm just like going through a lot of transitions, like switching from dance to volleyball. It's a lot of like complex emotions and feelings. And so I definitely like talk those through with my parents, and sometimes it's like it's just good to vent. And my parents like they don't really understand what's happening either. Sometimes
Mm,
they're like a little bit like clueless. So it's just like being able to vent and then like listen to
yeah.
my little siblings do that as well. Like
Mm.
I loved all the third grade drama. I want to hear it, I want to hear the third grade issues. I want to, what's going on in fifth grade math. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, that's so good. You want to hear the third grade drama. What's happening? Yes, yes. I don't hear enough of that. I do need to hang out with you guys some more and get some of that third grade tea, as they say. So okay, so you talking about your siblings and this you have obviously pretty big age gap when it comes to the younger siblings, but you mentioned you just have like 2.5 years gap with your eldest, right? With Carly. You told me something recently because when Carly went off to college, right? You're about 2 years behind her in school. So I'm curious, you guys went to the same high school
Yeah.
and she has a much different, she's different personality. How would you describe her compared to you in your personalities?
I would say Carly is a little bit, she's very strong in her beliefs, a little bit more stubborn. Um, she does like a lot of, like, she knows a lot of people. She's very, very smart, I will say. She has like very complex views about a lot of things, and a lot of people are like really respect her, and she's able to form very complex, like arguments and opinions,
Mm,
which is that is really cool. I would say for me, like being in the same high school as her, I kind of like I didn't ride on her coattails, but like I kind of got introduced to her friends and stuff, and those friends are now my friends, and just being able to create like a bigger network because it's easier to break into spaces when you're someone's little sibling than like, oh, I'm fresh here. Um,
yeah.
but I do think like differences. She's more open to talking to people, I will say, especially like larger groups. I'm more open to like talk to like people one on one or like couple people. I'm not for the big groups. Um,
Mhm.
yeah,
Interesting. So you shared with me because both of you were in was it the debate club? No,
mock trial.
mock trial. And you shared with me when you started mock trial, right? This was Carly's last year and she was kind of on her way out. But there was something that that you, I don't know if it was something you did consciously. You were telling me a little bit about what it was like to have Carly be the person introducing you to a kind of that kind of environment. So can you share a little bit about what was the role, what role did Carly play, and how did that make a difference for you?
Um, so Carly was the president of Montreal during that time, and she'd also like she was a pretty successful member. Like her team went to nationals and did pretty good at nationals the year before, and she'd been in it like pretty much been like done mock trial stuff since like eighth grade. So she was like really well known, really well accomplished, and I was just like her little sister. Um, but just like my team was completely new. So Carly and me, we're pretty close. So just being able to like bridge the gap between people who are like newer and then people who have the more experience, and then just being able to like really talk about issues without, because I wouldn't talk to issues with like someone who wasn't my sibling in the same way. You know,
Hmm.
me and Carly had a lot of vent sessions related to mock trial, and the likes. But it was just like definitely like a honestly, it was better than having to break into class by myself. I'm part of my school's DECA, and
Hmm.
I didn't like Carly wasn't in DECA.
What
She
is
had a
DECA
friend
for
who was.
people who may not know what that means?
It's a business club where you like you compete in. It's a competition club.
Okay.
And I didn't have anyone like who I knew who was in it. One of Carly's friends was the president or a vice president in it. But I wasn't really close friends with them or didn't know them very well. So it was just like definitely a different experience. And at the club, I definitely felt like kind of on the outs of the club at all times instead of being able to like talk to any of the seniors.
Yeah.
But in mock trial, I talked to everybody in the club. And honestly, like being Carly's sister, just like even if I'm just someone's little sister, I talked to everyone in the club. Everyone knew me, even if they knew me as like her little sister. I still talked to them. I made my own. I didn't necessarily make my own way, but I became my own person almost.
Yeah.
And I just being able to connect with more people. I think being like having Carly in the club gave me more confidence.
Mm, that's fascinating because I think what you're pointing to is, we have different types of people that support and guide us throughout life, different in different ways for different reasons. And it sounded like for you, Carly really helped you navigate that transition period, right? Becoming kind of your in to this group, not only energetically because your personalities are so different, but also very practically introducing you to people. Her reputation impacted your reputation. I don't know. I could imagine that there was a world where Carly wasn't how she was in that club, and maybe people would be like, "Oh, you're Carly's sister, okay," right? But maybe there wouldn't have been that the same reputation. So that's fascinating. So she was like a navigator for you in many ways in getting you those connections. And the fact that you can also see the distinction between how you were because you had her and in that introduction in that mock trial environment versus in DECA, where you kind of had to make your own way, right? She wasn't there to make those introductions, although you had a common contact, it looked like. But were you able to connect with with the president of DECA at all in the way that Carly connected with her?
So I definitely like towards the end of the year, because this girl was also in mock trial. I definitely talked with her more. And like me, Carly, and her, and some of my friends would sometimes hang out because it was kind of like we all know each other, and I'm like, because I was Carly's little sister, it's like easier for me to just talk to her. And
Yeah,
it actually did make my DECA time easier, just like knowing someone in leadership.
yeah.
But sadly she graduated, and this year, with DECA, kind of went back to the way it was, where I don't really like know them as well. Which is kind of crazy because like I did pretty well. Me and my partner did pretty well on DECA this year.
Mhm.
Um, but like even then we were still kind of like felt on the outs. Like we went to like the competitions and stuff, and like people just other than like a couple people, no one talked to us. Um,
Interesting.
versus mock trial where like I feel like through knowing Carly and having that like actually close connection, I was able to like establish my own relationship with everybody. And eventually led to me being elected as one of the co-presidents of mock trial this year.
Oh, really? All right. So those connections continue to grow even after she left.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Um, so I want to come back to something you were talking. So this idea of getting introduced, you have had some different changes in your life as far as activities that you do over the last few years. So I'm curious about what inspires you to go after something new? Like what inspired you to try mock trial or DECA or some of the sports or dances? Like you've been really involved as a teenager, right? So what inspired you to start getting involved in these things?
Well, I don't think I consciously realized it until pretty recently when I did like a human design thing. But something that's like always encouraged me is like invitations. I've like throughout my life, just like when someone gives me an invitation, when I take it, honestly, it usually is for the better. Like for volleyball, one of the coaches at my school approached me in the hallway, and told me I should try out for the team.
Just
And even
randomly?
though, yes, because I'm
Okay.
I'm like kind of taller,
Because you're
um,
like 6 feet tall.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that sparked my volleyball journey, and then here I am, a year and a half later, and I'm about to do senior year volleyball. Even though I'm not playing for the school, it still like sparked my interest. And
Mm,
then playing for the team I played last year for volleyball, I was invited to in that team. I wasn't even trying out; I just got invited. And then
mhm.
this year I was invited to a tryout that I wouldn't have gone to otherwise, and made the
Yeah.
team. And then through like with dance, a lot of times, um, I don't necessarily know if I was invited when I first started, but it was like dance when like you're younger. It's kind of like, oh, come join this little girl at dance class. It's like and then I just kind of stuck with that. And
Yeah.
then for everything, honestly, like and for my clubs and stuff, a lot of times it was like, hey, let's go to this club. They're gonna have food today. Like, and that's how I got started with most clubs. Mock trial, I went because there was food.
Yeah.
DECA, I that was the only club I didn't go because there was food. I only went because I wanted to do that club. But um, Black Student Union, I went because there's food. Healing Hearts Club, I went because there was food. Um, it's
That's
a big
no, I mean,
motivator.
this is what inspires a lot at, in that point in my life too. I remember, hey, you having pizza? That's gonna be a good club, right? You know, just go because there's food available. I get that.
Yeah. So honestly, like the invitation of like either someone personally reaching out and said we should do this, or just like, oh, come to this club. There's gonna be this. There's gonna be games.
Yeah.
It honestly has made like such a big difference because I will sometimes go out and like look for opportunities, but I feel like the best outcomes for me personally come from things I wasn't expecting necessarily, like things I didn't have to go find.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned human design earlier, and we've talked about this quite a bit because that's one of these tools, these very it's a self-awareness system and tool that takes in all these different types of um, systems from other cultures. So the Kabbalah, astrology, the I Ching. I mean, there's quantum physics. There's all sorts of different things that comprise this human design system. And similar to any personality test or assessment that you can take, it gives you here's kind of your makeup. Here's what your design is in worldly and practical terms. And so I introduced this to you, and I remember at first you were like, "Is this scientific? Like, is this like real?" And I told you, I said, "Look, for me, if it's a if I have an experience where it aligns and resonates for me, that's all I need most of the time. I know that there are a lot of things that can and can't be proven by traditional scientific methods, but this one was one of those things that in my life and in the life of the people I coach, this has made a huge impact when we have this self-awareness. And so you did the assessment, and we've been using ChatGPT to kind of peel back the layers, right? So what you're pointing to, this idea of being invited, came because that's your design is to wait for an invitation for people to ask you or offer you something. But I'm curious because not everyone has this particular design, right? For example, for me is wait to respond. And so similar in that people will offer something or there's an opportunity or I do something based on the response, and the response for me has to be pretty intuitive and if it's going to be something that brings me joy, or I feel there's interest, or I feel that there's it raises my energy to engage, that's my response. That's when I respond to the things, right? Not out of a sense of guilt or obligation or duty. That does not work for me in particular. So I'm curious, now that you know this about yourself, what are you seeing that you didn't see before, or how are you how are you behaving that perhaps you weren't behaving before?
I think just being able to reflect on the past and kind of seeing I've been invited a lot. Like a lot of things in my life that have come that have like been fruitful have been at the result of an invitation. And I just think just like seeing that like I was not necessarily invited, but someone reached out about a job, like to driving their kid to practice. And so just seeing that in the future and being like, this tends to work for me, and just being more
Mhm.
open and accepting of invitations. And I've been trying to like not as much like seek out things because that doesn't tend to be successful for me, but seeking out invitations. So my algorithm is constantly full of college and scholarships, and things like that, where it's
Mm.
when the opportunity is presented to you, to take it. So like putting myself in situations where I have opportunities presented to me, being around the right people, talking about my interests, talking about things that I've done, to be able to be offered those opportunities is really huge.
Oh, I think you said the right. This is really the key, because someone could listen to this and go, "Oh, she's waiting for an invitation." You're just like sitting eating grapes and bonbons in the backyard or whatever, just chilling. And that's not the case. What you said right there, that last piece, is really the key in this particular design system, is that you're talking to people about what you enjoy and what you're good at, right? You're engaging with others. They're seeing and observing you interact. And so the invitations come from that. It's an energy that one, in your case, that you're emanating by doing those things that makes people go, "Oh, I should invite Lucy." And it actually happened with me and you, right? Because your when your mother posted that you were looking for a summer job on social media, I was like, I wait, we can't just have a post. What is this? Nothing, no shade to your mom. I mean, I love that she's really getting you and Carly out there working on things. But I think for me, I thought, if you had more information or more self-awareness about this part of your personality, you might be able more intentional about the kind of opportunities that you put yourself out there for, right? This was a way of this created invitations. Putting a post on social media creates an invitation from other people. The thing is, you have to also be really mindful about what you're inviting people to, what people are inviting you to do based on what you're sharing. So being really intentional about what you share is important. And so that's what I was basically sharing. That's why I shared human design with you, because I thought this is a way for you to be more intentional about what it is that you want to receive. And in our conversation, because so you put in your human design information into ChatGPT. Actually, I'm not going to tell it. I'm going to let you tell it. Can you tell people what we did and what difference it made, or what did you learn from that experience?
So I took my human design chart and I put into ChatGPT with a prompt from my aunt, and it was just saying like
You
what
can say
like
me.
it was just like a prompt that like had ChatGPT explain it and then like say what I'd be good at, or like what my human design is and stuff. And we saw that my human design was like wait for invitation. And so my aunt took this as an opportunity to pitch that I work as her virtual assistant during the summer, because we had previously talked about business things and things related to Connect to Joy, and then her new podcast and her new book coming out. Yes, it's coming out soon,
Yes, it's
I think.
coming out.
And so because we had that history, and then I established I wanted a summer job, and that was something like, and then the virtual assistant actually popped up as a job that I'd be good at because of my human design, something a little more flexibility that I could perform at home, but also, you know, have multiple clients for. And so it just seemed like a match. And I believe your design was like also like you put out the invitation in the world. Um,
Mhm.
and so it just seemed like a match. And then yeah.
Very cool. Well, I think for me, really the reason the invitation came about was, yes, I know obviously a little bit about you. You're very organized, very task-oriented person. You're reliable, right? Personable. Like I knew all those things about you already, but I think seeing that for you, types of roles, the types of tasks and activities that would be in alignment for you, when I saw that the virtual assistant thing and we talked about like what does that actually look like, what does that mean, and how to a 16-year-old do this particular job. What was interesting to me is as we started to kind of describe it, I was like, hey, I need somebody like that for me. So that's where the wait for respond comes. I get some kind of input, information, and when I notice going, hey, that would be cool. That sounds interesting. That's when I go, okay, I invite. So I have to wait for something like that to inspire me to extend an invitation. If I were just like, okay, I need this, I need that, I need this, let me just make an invitation, it doesn't work as well for me, right? There has to be some sense for me to be in alignment with my design. I have to be inspired by it. So it worked out that that was something that you could do, and that's something that I actually needed. And so you're going to be helping me launch and produce this podcast, which is fantastic. This is what I was saying in the beginning. But what I think it's important here, Lucy, is this conversation about what how we receive what people offer us. I think that's what you're talking a lot about, listening and waiting for an invitation. Because when people want to offer support, they want to do it because they want to make a contribution, right? They're maybe looking for connection, like the third grade drama. There's an opportunity for connection. They're looking for empathy. There's something that they need that they're inviting you to engage with them, right? But I think what
Mhm.
you do so well in this part of your nature is the listen and receive, right? Would you agree with that statement that you're really good at receiving?
Yeah, I would say so. I
Yeah.
think like receiving is just, better than giving.
Well, I don't know,
Wow.
better. Better than giving. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily, well, maybe. But yeah, this is interesting though. This is interesting. So talk to us a little bit about now you're looking to go to college. You said and the other thing you said that was really interesting was this now your algorithm, right? So as you're on social media, your algorithm is also inviting you, right? Inviting your attention, inviting you to participate in, opportunities and that sort of thing. So what what does what does this discovery about yourself look like now when you're looking for the next phase of your life, right? So you're preparing to go off to school or preparing to launch some sort of career. What are you thinking right now?
So because of like, it's not necessarily because of the invitation mindset, human design thing, but something that's really important to me about my future is that I have opportunities presented. Not every school will have that. Some schools will have like way more opportunities. So just for me, it's really important that I go to a school in a location that's going to be able to give me opportunities. There are several schools I've looked at that are like great schools, but it's just like they're so far removed from cities, and
Mm-hmm.
anywhere that's like gonna offer like any kind of financial internship that it's just not really worth going there.
Okay.
But some schools in like Dallas, the Bay Area, New York, Boston, Chicago, Miami, they have a lot of opportunities, and I've been looking at schools in those areas. Um, because even if I'm not necessarily invited to them, being around the energy, and being there, being ready to like receive that,
Mm-hmm.
depending like also on college fairs, because a lot of
Yeah.
colleges will have like recruiters for various firms, law firms and investment banking firms, which are things I want to go into. So yes, and as I go into career, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're also creating an environment where the likelihood of having invitation and opportunities is going to be much higher, right? Just by virtue of the population that's there and the access. Yeah, I got that. Okay. Um, so I changing the subject a little bit, not the subject, but at least the direction of the conversation. You're one of the younger guests that I've had on this podcast. So definitely a different generation. And there's likely different approaches and styles of reaching out and communicating with people, networking, right? We talked a little bit about the personality aspect of it. If you're more introverted or extroverted, or if you're more like wait for an invitation, or you're more initiate, the initiator. Like we've talked about that a bit. But I'd love to hear more from the sense of your family of origin, right? So your parents and your siblings, for example, even extended family like me. But I'm curious about what support or guidance have you found beneficial at this stage in your life from the people who are closest to you? What's helpful, what's not helpful? Like if another person, like in my generation, were listening to their to their child or to their niece or nephew, what might they need to learn about communicating or supporting or guiding a young person at this point?
That's actually a really great question because I see a lot of adults struggle with that. Um, so something that my parents do, my mom especially, she's a very good listener. She'll like let me just sit there on her bed and just talk about my issues, and then she'll just be like, "I'm sorry, that's bad," or like sometimes she'll be like, "Have you thought of this?" In contrast, my dad, if I say because I talk about a problem I'm having, he will only give solutions, um, which is sometimes it's helpful if you're looking to have a problem solved,
Yeah.
like something's broken. But sometimes when you're just going through like a rough time, having solutions thrown at you, sometimes you don't necessarily want a solution. You just want to talk about problem. And that's something I see a lot of adults do, especially like to their like children. And it's like it's not necessarily helpful at all. Um, Additionally, I just think kids just want to like be listened to, and not always have to like go to their parents to talk about things. Sometimes I wish my parents would like talk to me first without me having to go say, "Oh, I have a problem with this." You know, it's
What
not
do you
always
mean?
like sometimes it'd be more helpful if like instead of me saying this is what's happening at school, if they ask me how is school, what's going on, what's going on
Mm,
with this person, which I think my parents they do sometimes, but I think just all teens would prefer that instead of having to because sometimes I don't want to like be complaining or I don't want to bring up things, you know. So just being able to have that space to bring it up in a conversation is really helpful.
interesting. So for you, so it sounds like for you would be helpful to be invited to speak, right? Even by your parents. There it is again. Um, and I have to chuckle a little bit because what you said about how your mom listens and empathizes when you're sharing something versus your dad wants to provide solutions when you're sharing something. That's, I think, probably a lot of women will probably be like, "Oh my gosh, that happens too." Right? Generally speaking, and then I follow the work of this author. Her name is Allison Armstrong, which I will turn you on to when you're a little older. Maybe I don't know if you're interested in this, all the stuff that she has to say right now, but she talks a lot about how to understand men, for example, but also by virtue of understanding men, we understand ourselves as women even better. And one of the things that she says is that often our tendency that the feminine energy is to listen, is to be more compassionate, to connect, right? So we listen and we speak to connect more often than not, especially when we're in that kind of receptive mindset. um, and the masculine energy, really what they're focused on is in focusing on what is the point and what is the problem. What's the point? What's the problem? And so it turns into a solution finding conversation. What I've learned to do, because I have three of them, or three brothers, right? Your dad is one of them, and I have two other brothers. So what I've learned with them, and then also with Ahmad, my partner, with him and even my dad, one of the things that I do now is I stayed up front. I don't need to find a solution to this. There's nothing to solve for. I just need to vent a bit about what's going on. I already have some ideas, right? Or I need to let them know that in advance, or I will just say to them, I just need you to listen. There's nothing else you need to do, because then you have given them the problem. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Rather than them listening for the problem and trying to come up with a solution, especially in case your dad, this is a little trick. Try it with your dad and see what happens. Just say, "Hey, Dad, I just need you to listen. You don't need to solve it." And that becomes just that becomes okay. The problem for me to fix is I need to listen. It's kind of very meta, but that's so I share that because I use it with them and it works. But I think you're right. We struggle as adults, and your sister actually, Carly, taught me that very early on because I'm a coach, right? I'm a leadership coach, and so for me, I always want to help people, help them solve their own problems or whatever. And I remember she was probably like 14 years old. I don't know if maybe I've done this to you too, and you haven't said this, but I remember her sharing some stuff about something was going on at school, and so I start with my, well, Carly, can you share a little bit more about whatever? I asked her something, and she's like, "Are you coaching me right now, Tia Valerie?" And I was just like, it's not a good thing. But why?" She's like, "I don't need coaching right now. I'm just venting right now." I was just like, "Oh, oh, okay, cool. All right, vent." And it was one of those moments similar to what I'm telling you with your dad, was that, oh, I could just relax. Because I think a part of me always feels compelled to, because I know that this is a way that I show up in the world, that's what people need most from me, right? They need me to be that coach person, which happens so naturally and instinctively that that's like a default. But when someone says, "No, I just need to vent," I was like, "Oh, I don't, oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that too. I can just listen." But it was helpful for her to ask, to say that to me, because now I usually start by asking, "Do you want me to just listen, or would you like some coaching?" And
That's so important, I think, like, who are you going to? Because if I go to my dad to talk about something and he doesn't respond in the way I would want him to, it's not really his fault usually. Sometimes it's like, yeah, you could be a little more supportive instead of problem solving. But if I truly have something I'm upset with, I'll probably go to like one of my friends or
mm,
my sister because like the people you're going to, like I would go to you if I wanted to vent, but probably like it wouldn't be as constructive of a vent because you're like who I go through for like coaching and that kind of advice. So
yeah,
just having like designated people, you just like I think a lot of people try to go to everyone for everything. Have you heard of like people who have like different types of friends?
yeah,
Where it's like you
yeah.
have certain friends where it's like, yeah, I'll bring them to a work party, but they're not coming over, to the barbecue. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like just having like different people you go to in different situations really helps them because I think I'm good at being vented to. I'm not very good at problem solving, I'll say. But if you, if you like someone wants to talk to me about, their issues, I'm sad, I'm listening, I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Um, but if you come to me with problem solving, I'm not going to be as helpful in that. So just going to
Mm.
different people when you have different problems is really important.
That's that's brilliant. And that's really the whole point of this, the circle of hope. That's is what it's about. She's Yeah, of course. I've listening. I've been listening to exactly why this program and project and book is so important. So I'm just going to give you a little gift, Tia Valerie, in my podcast mention. No, you're right. I think the idea that we don't need to have one person be everything for us. And I'm so glad that you're learning this now, Lucy, because I didn't understand that until much later. It showed up in my life. Like I would have different friends for different times. I remember in the seventh grade, actually, we were living in Hawaii at the time, and it was so interesting because I had a different group of friends that I hung out with before school started. Like the first recess, I'd have a different group, and then at lunchtime, I'd have a different group, and then after school, I was in band or whatever. We had different, and so I would have these little different pockets of friends, and every day I'd come back the next morning and they were like, "Oh my gosh, Valerie, you missed what happened at lunch." And I'm like, "Why?" Because I didn't hang out with the same group in the morning as I did at lunch.
Mhm.
And at first, sometimes I felt a little left out. I felt a little, it was kind of lonely to not be in because I wasn't there for when the thing happened. But I couldn't help myself but surround myself with different people at different times of the day. For whatever reason, I couldn't, I can't even imagine how, I don't know if it was conscious for me in those days to choose that. But what your comment does, I think, is validate for anybody who is noticing that they're not getting their needs met by this one friend or one parent or one sibling or one whatever, one spouse, that they know that we do need a circle of people. We have, everyone has different perspectives and talents and abilities. And how cool would it be to just surround yourselves with enough people that you know where you can go to get your needs met. You have options, right? It's not like a multi-tool. A human is not like a multi-tool, multi-purpose tool. You now have, okay, I gotta get a few people. I need some diversity, right? So cool. Anything else about that that would be helpful for us to know, especially about how to work with the younger generations?
I think sometimes adults have like bigger like networks of people than most kids do. And so I think it's like while I might go to you for like a coaching thing, maybe you have a friend who's like a therapist or something, you know, who
Mm-hmm.
like if we talked or something, they'd be a better person to vent to,
Yeah.
or who you could go to for like advice, like because I'm not really gonna talk to some random person, like especially as a teenager, like if you try to make me to talk to like one of your friends, I might, but it's like gonna be awkward. So if you
Mm-hmm.
can just like get advice from like various people in your lives, I think that's helpful. That's what I do sometimes. I'll talk to like my friends who are, really like really academic people
Mm-hmm.
for advice about like, okay, I have an interview, what are your interview tips? And sometimes I'll talk to my friends who are like very like fun people, like, hey, I'm gonna hang out with my little siblings, like what do you recommend, or like just like people, sometimes like while it is important to go to different people for different things, sometimes it is nice to feel like you can do more than just one thing. Like for me and you, I go to you for coaching mostly, but like I don't only talk about that when we're together. Sometimes we'll go out to lunch or we'll play a game, and it's just nice to know you can do multiple things. Like just
Yeah,
because you are best at one thing doesn't mean you can only do one thing.
absolutely. And you don't come to me for coaching, do you?
Not really yet, but like that's kind of
I'm like, when did you come to me for I go to you to offer coaching, but I don't think it's the other way around. What do you come to me for? Like real talk, is what is the role that I play in your life?
sometimes, well, I think I send you a lot of stuff. I send you like all that witch stuff, you know?
My what?
Kind of remind me of a witch.
Which stuff?
In the best
You're
way
talking about
possible.
holistic, more,
Yes.
yes. Got it.
Um, I think I also like when you're over, it's just like you're my aunt, Like you're like a family member, so it's like not like weird, but you're removed enough that you don't see me every day, which is kind
Hmm.
of nice, Because
Hmm.
sometimes I don't want to see my family every single day.
Mm.
Um, yeah. I think I just go to you. I send you I send you reels I think you'll like, but I don't send you the ones that I think are the funny because you probably won't find those ones funny. Um, yeah, I think that's what I go to you for. I don't really like, and also like, I don't know. You're like good at like. If I was gonna start a podcast, you're who I go to. You know,
Okay.
if I was gonna like, do like some networking stuff, you're who I'd go to.
Okay.
Also financial stuff, because you always like got all like the books and like podcasts and like articles. Like this person I went to a conference with and they know finance. Oh,
Hmm.
they know black woman finance. So yeah.
Well, you're interested in finance. So like you, I also listen very closely to what people are interested in, and then I help them get connected with other people who might be able to speed up the process or connect them to the resources they need. I'm kind of a connector that way.
Nectar energy,
A
I love it.
connector energy, yes. No, this has been really interesting, Lucy. I do think that adults. I think that one of the things that you said earlier too is we can go to different people for different needs, and but also the proxy, right? That person can serve as a proxy. So if you're dealing with something, I can give you advice from somebody else that I know, that I don't always have to be the one making the intro. Okay, hey, you said you're needing some financial advice. Let me introduce you to this person who's a finance person, right? Maybe sometimes
Mhm.
that's helpful, maybe not. But what I could do is say, hey, my niece has some questions about XYZ, get the answers and information, and then provide them for you. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. So I become like the proxy for that person. Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. And then if you were offering advice to younger people, so now we talked a bit about what adults can do better, but what can young people, what can other teenagers, or when you think about your siblings as they're coming up, the younger ones, what advice would you want to give them about connecting with people and expanding their circles?
I think like going back to what I said at the beginning, like just like take the time to like listen to people. It makes a really big difference when you can kind of see the vibe of people because certain people, like I will say, like when you first start like middle school or high school and you talk to people in your classes, it can almost be like now you have to talk to them the rest of the year, because you'll just always see them. If you
Yeah.
have a class with someone and it's like you sit next to them and all of a sudden you start ignoring, like that's not okay necessarily. So just like making sure you know what kind of people you're like talking to, and then just also just like being able to be there for people I think is really important because there are so many like I know some people who are like who I like love dearly, but like if I have an issue I would not go to them,
Yeah.
because I just don't think that like they care about me that much,
Sure.
or like care about me in that manner. And I think just for me, like I do have a couple of friends from middle school who I'm still super close with, and it's just like my best friend Maureen. We've been friends since seventh grade, and she's my best friend. And so just like having people like that where it's like you've been friends with them so long, you don't have to stay friends with people from middle school, but having those like people you can bring into your life is just really important. Because I can see myself staying friends with like my some of my middle school friends,
Hmm.
into adulthood. And I just think like having people I can rely on, like I've never since I've made friends, like really good friends, I've never like thought to myself like I'm not gonna have friends this year, or I'm
Yeah.
not gonna know anyone in this class, which is just so important. Especially because I go to like a pretty big high school, and like if I didn't like have any friends, it would be kind of challenging because
Yeah.
it's so easy to just be like friendless and sitting by yourself all the time,
Hmm.
which was me at one point. Like in ninth grade, I didn't have very many friends, and
Hmm.
I was kind of a loner.
Hmm.
um, I didn't want to be a loner. I just kind of didn't have very many friends. Um, but just having those like valuable people from like middle school and then just also making connections, listening to people. It's not really like manipulation, but just like let's pick up on what people like. And then if you like those same things or if you can make yourself like them, they'll like you too. So,
Interesting. Okay.
well, not in
Well,
a toxic way, but
say again.
not in a toxic way though.
Not in a toxic way. Yeah. Do it authentic, being authentic in expressing interest about something, or at least curious about it. Right. I say there's a lot of things that I don't know that people are into that I don't have to pretend I'm into it, but I could definitely muster some interest to learn about it. Right. I can go, okay, I don't know anything about that. What is that like? What is that for? And sometimes it draws me in and I want to know more or I want to engage in whatever the activity is. And sometimes I'm just like, okay, that's not going to be for me. That's okay. Um, so you mentioned that in ninth grade you were kind of a loner, right? You didn't have that many friends. So a person like, but I this is something that I hear and see from other young people that I've mentored in the past too. So what advice would you give? Like now you're a senior, right? You're looking back to that ninth grade Lucy, trying to figure out a way through a large school without the connections that you have today. What advice would you give her or somebody like her?
Honestly, just like be yourself. There's nothing worse than like you act a certain way to be friends with certain people, but then it's like you just have to like keep up and act or like not like be yourself around those certain people. Um, it's like honestly, it's better to have no friends than fake friends. which is it's very true. Um, and honestly, just like talk to people. Like I know it sounds like as someone who's very shy, I usually wouldn't do that. But like especially the first couple days of like school or starting something, people expect you like it's not weird to be the one talking, you know? It's only weird if you make it weird. And it's like some of the people who I've like who are the most popular at my school, not that there's like popular kids, but like people who I know like almost everyone knows are the people who just talk to everybody.
Hmm.
And I just think like making like finding your people is really important. Because I have a friend from my ninth grade Spanish class, um, and we didn't have any similar interests really. We just like we talked sometimes, but it was like we didn't really stay in touch that much. And then sophomore year, didn't have a single class with them, barely saw them. But then junior year, they were in my dual credit classes, and having like built that foundation, I know this person, we're not like super great friends, but like, we were pretty like we were friends. And then
Yeah.
this year we became really good friends. And she's one of my closest friends now. And so just like building those foundations early on, even if you don't remain friends with them, it's good to have those people.
Oh, 100%. Okay. One thing tell me if you agree with this particular advice, but a piece of advice that I've given people that I've mentored is that, especially if you're quiet, if you tend to be on the quiet side, I love what you said. It's better to have no friends than to have fake friends. So don't like make it up. Like I said, we're going back to being authentic. But I say work on being interested more than being interesting. Right. So the idea being is like be interested in people, what they're doing, asking questions. If you, like you said, you're more of a one-on-one person rather than a large group, right? So maybe wait until somebody's one-on-one and then ask, hey, so I noticed that you were in this group and you were talking about XYZ, right? Or if you're good with the large group energy, is to find out more about the group. How do they know each other? What are they up to? That kind of thing. But to be interested in eventually helps people become interested in us too, right? But first the energy has to kind of go outward, or at least be open, to your point, right? To be open to hear and listen to others. So any other advice for young people,
Um,
or wish, or things you wish you'd known or wish people had shared with you?
Things I wish I've known. Do anything that interests you, anything and everything that interests you. I think honestly, like, there's nothing worse than like telling yourself that like I'm too old to try this or like I couldn't try this. You know, if it's something you're interested in, just do it because there are things I've done for like a year. You know, I did piano for a year and I didn't like it, but I played piano and I know that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I played guitar for like 2, 3 years, and I liked it, but it was just like not for me. And so just doing things that
Yeah.
interest you, trying everything that interests you, joining clubs that interest
Yeah.
you is really important. Making friends, be authentic, be yourself. The right people will find you. And then especially when you're like if you're entering middle school or entering high school, everyone doesn't know each other.
Yeah.
There are definitely some people who are like, oh, they know that person, but not everyone's already friends.
Hmm.
Most people don't have the same amount of friends, and most people aren't the popular kids. Most
Right.
people are normal kids who don't have that many friends. And so it feels like everyone has like, advantages over you. When in reality, people just give a little, front, little bravado, but it's like everyone else is struggling the same way.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, just stick with things that you like and don't stick with things that don't serve you. Like
Mm.
sometimes it's like, you know, things you don't like to do. Like sometimes I don't want to volunteer places, but it's for like the greater good. So. But if you don't like I didn't like I loved dancing and I still do, but I just didn't really like doing it. I loved
Mm.
it, but I didn't like it.
Hmm.
So it just wasn't serving me. And then
Interesting.
I was able to transition to a different sport that I love so much now. And so just never feel like boxed in.
Yeah.
Try everything. Try everything. That's always the advice I'm going to give people. If you,
Yes.
you know, if you never know, you'll never know.
That's true. Try everything. You know where I learned that from?
Utopia. Oh, oh, oh.
No.
Try everything.
It wasn't utopia. Zootopia. I got that advice. It wasn't necessarily as explicit as you just said it, but I saw that modeled by abuelo and abuela, by your grandparents, my parents, as they were never too old to try something new. I remember, and I don't know if you know any of this, but when abuelo was in his 50s, he got a black belt in Taekwondo. It's
Really?
like, yeah, he was like 52 or something like that. You know why? Because he was stationed in Korea, and why not? You know, um, abuela also, my mother, she had many careers. So when we immigrated from Panama to the US, she was a teacher. She was a school teacher, trained as a school teacher, had been years teaching school. But when we moved, because we were moving so frequently, and the school systems here required a different level of certification, and it was hard for her to overcome that, having young kids and then moving every couple of years, and then as a military wife, that she would always find new activities to do, volunteer for different things. And she never just went for the same thing. She's like, oh, I'm going to volunteer at the library this time. Oh, I'm going to volunteer at the school. Oh, this one, I'm going to volunteer for this nonprofit. And it was always like, she was always willing to try the next thing, the next place. She was never one to just like, oh, well, we're in a new place. I don't know anybody. So that was something that was modeled for me throughout my life by my parents, by your grandparents. And so I'm so glad to hear that you have that. Is genetic, Lucy. You may not know that, but it's genetic what you're experiencing right now. But I know your parents too they're both very active. They love making a contribution in the communities, and they have served as amazing examples for you, I'm sure, and role models. And for me too.
I thought of another piece of
Sure.
advice. So obviously I haven't like lived this necessarily. Like I'm not, older. Um, but something of like there's a lot of like representation of people who are like who've like told themselves they're like since they were 5 years old, I'm gonna be a surgeon. And they just do every activity to do that, and then they become that, and you have to decide so young what you want to be, which in some aspects what you do when you're younger, it does affect your adult life. But like
Hmm.
I just seen my parents like my mom like in high school, she wasn't like this crazy perfect all A student, She had like normal teenage experiences and stuff. She went to like concerts and had fun. And then she joined the military and now she's a stay-at-home mom. And so it's like, you can like there's so much like who you are as like a kid doesn't define your adult life. And
Yeah.
then also my dad like started like he was kind of like a nerd when he was growing up, I think,
He was.
Like he like,
I can vouch for
uh,
that.
and then he joined the military, and then now he's like a teacher and like a soccer coach, and just like who you are as a kid, it might impact you, like where you go to college, you might meet certain people, but like everything happens for a reason. You're gonna end up exactly where you're meant to. You're gonna have the experiences that shape you and make you the person you are. And so I've just always like kind of lived by that also like
Yeah.
everything happens for a reason. If I make the team, it happened for a reason. If I don't, it happened for a reason.
Yeah.
Everything sets you on a certain path to who you are. And I think it's
Mm.
super important because like when I'm thinking about college and stuff, where am I gonna go? I do not know. But all I know is that God has a plan and it's gonna make me the person I am in the future and it's all gonna work out. But I'm not
Mm.
defined by who I am or who I am right now or where I get into college right now. You know? I'm
Mm.
not defined by my 16-year-old self.
No. Wow. Wisdom. I think you get that from me. I'm going to take that. Wow, Lucy, this is really fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your expertise and your experience of life thus far. I think there's a lot that we can learn, even from young people. I think that's the other thing that for adults that I would say, yes, listening is important, but listen to learn. Don't just listen to resolve or just empathize or sympathize, but listen to learn. Because I do learn quite a bit. Like I said, I learned from Carly, I learned from you, right? You have been a challenger in my life. And I think I've shared this. You don't think so? Why the face?
Wait, explain why though. Explain
Well,
why.
there are a couple of things. One, I think out of everybody in the family, you've probably taken the most interest in my business, right? So you'll ask me
Um,
questions. And I remember years ago, you were like, "Do you have any merch? Do you have some merchandise? Like everybody has merch that has a business. Where's yours?" So I'm like, I don't have merch. I don't know. I don't know if I want any. But look at this. Boom. I got a shirt with my company logo on it now, right? And you planted that seed. Now it's not merch because I'm not selling it, but I might if y'all comment that you want one. So this could turn into a nice little business opportunity. But so that is one thing I remember specifically you asking me. There are other things that have come up, and I can't put my finger on all of them right now. But yeah, you have on many occasions asked a question or made a statement about something that's made me kind of like, oh. Really? Oh, okay. I'm not, even as we're working together on this project, on these projects, there are things that I'm learning that I need to provide for you that I maybe took for granted, right? That there are things that you have to learn to do and things that have to guide you a little bit more. But because of our conversations and my listening, helps me see where the gaps are that I need to fill or helps me know that oh I can just let her do her thing. She's got this. So do my lower my hand here on Zoom.
They doesn't do
But
that?
on mine does, yeah. I don't think your phone will do that. In any case, so yes, this has been an enlightening conversation, Lucy. Any
Yeah.
final words before we wrap up?
Um, um, well, I mean, I guess we were kind of just talking about like, you know how everyone is like different in your lives. You need you're gonna have your parallel friend, your connector friend, your challenger friend, and your supporter friend.
Hmm.
And they don't all have to be the same people, but there might be some overlap. I
Yes,
personally believe I'm all for everybody,
we
but
all
not
are.
everyone has that talent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's good. Yeah, thank you for calling back. Those are the four different types of influencers that we need in our lives as part of our circle. And I'm very intentional about the kind of people I have in my circle as well. And the more mature and the wiser I become, the more intentional I become about who's in and who's out and to what level, what degree, right? And also this idea that not everybody's meant to be everything to everybody, right? And we have our preferred roles that we can play in each other's lives, but we all, like you said, can be a little bit of everything for everyone to different degrees, of course. And so that's really the whole message of this podcast is to encourage people to know that there's a lot of us out there. I mean, if you have 8 billion people on the planet, you can find four people, right? You can find at least four people on this planet that you can have a meaningful exchange with that will support your growth, that will help you thrive in life, right? That I think that's really the message here. So I'm so grateful, Lucy, once again for you saying yes and being on this podcast today, and also all the projects that you're working on to get this podcast out in the world. I don't take that for granted either. So thanks for joining, Lucy.
thank you so much for inviting me. It was super fun. Definitely like an actually like interesting conversation. I was worried that
Yeah? What were you worried about?
it was gonna be like not fun.
That would be
But it was,
boring or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just to show like really like, this podcast is really gonna be something really good that everyone should listen to.
There you go. Hype it
And
up.
everyone should read the book and
You're
subscribe.
well, that's one of the reasons I'm doing the podcast and the book is because I realized that I could have this information, this conversation with a coaching client and point to all the different types of people that they might have in their circle. And I started realizing I'm kind of repeating myself often. I wish I just had a book that I can just hand them and say, hey, read page 14 or whatever, right? So that's one of the things that inspired me to start writing this book. And then, if, ironically, by writing the book, I started to feel a little bit like, I feel like the life of the podcast or the life of the content is losing a little bit of the juice. I was losing some of the juice for the content that I was writing. I said, I need to talk about it more and bring it to life. So it's not just this theoretical, conceptual thing, And so the podcast was born out of my own need to remember and reflect. This is why this is important. Oh my gosh. So I'm getting to hang out with people who are in my circle and share with you all the listeners, people who are watching this. This is what being a part of the circle feels like and looks like, right? So they get to see it kind of in a meta way, see somebody else doing it. And hopefully you all that are listening and watching this are reflecting on your own circle. And what's your relationship like with the young people in your life? Are you listening as much as you could? Are you providing them with solutions too much or too little, right? Are you providing them with empathy? Are you learning from them? Like there's so many ways in which they can hopefully get this conversation and take some action. So that's my wish for all of you who've been tuning in. Thank you all so much for spending this time with us. Lucy, once again, thank you. And
Thank
stay
you.
tuned. You will have opportunities to get the book and get this podcast episode and subscribe to others, okay? Have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this episode of The Circle of Hope. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and share with someone in your circle. And if you're curious about the upcoming book, visit valeriehope.com for updates and extras. Until then, stay connected.